Right, can we start? Yeah. So anybody here who sat for the mock exam? Will you try? You try? Okay. So how about 26 means you mean from 30 questions? 20? Yes. Did mock exam? No. No. How much? 30? 22. 100 out of 100. You guys? Yes. All right. Out of 30 you mean? Yes. Okay, you guys? Okay. Okay. So you didn't believe like I had the mark sheet with me, right? Yeah, shared it with me. So nearly 116 has attempted, whereas how many do you think have passed? How many things? How many might have passed? You know the pass mark? What's the pass mark? 70%, right? So out of 116, only 56 has scored more than 70%. Okay. It's really basic. Like nearly 20% of the syllabus was there, right? Really easy. There wasn't a single calculation, right? Was there? Few, no? PED calculation. I don't know because I was not the one who made the paper. Right. Sorry, I forgot that. Guys, can you hear? Okay. So there was a technical issue, Taran, is it? Okay. So was there something like that, a technical issue when you're like attempting it in the lens? I'll be informed, right? But the same. Which is? You mean only originally you had only 15 questions? So that's why you have passed, so no gifts. I have brought some gifts for the people who have passed along with the name. So no gifts, right? In questions. I go. No point. Anyway, I was not the one to make the paper. Thoroughly keep that in your mind. Right? There were 30 questions. No, but that's okay. Then. See, different set of questions. Same amount content. Even the numbers and everything is same. Ask for money from wisdom and leave. Don't come to class. Right? No point. Right? Right, that's okay. Anyway, we'll be discussing these 30 questions, but that's in the second half. Firstly, like, we will look into the new part. So imagine 116 has attempted this. Not a single one just gave me a call and told me this up until now. Right? You could have told me, no, so I could have adjusted it in the LMS. No? So good as a batch. Really thoughtful about your friends and stuff. Anyway, that's okay. Right? So in financial system too, right? We'll be discussing the questions, but in the second half, yeah. In the second half, we'll be discussing it. And we have left few questions in financial systems too, is it? I think we have left few questions. Right? So you didn't bring the tutes and you came straightly to discuss the mock exam. Was that it? No, right? Because of the attendance, I thought of like starting the most important lesson, which is macroeconomics, right? So I should have something for the people who is absent today, So I'll be starting off with the new lesson, and I'll be like focusing on about 1 hour. Yeah, about 1 hour about the mock exam. Most of them were repeated. Right, that's okay. Take it easy. You don't have to make it like that. Right, after the break, we'll discuss about the mock exam, right? That's not about the questions anyway. You just have to understand that how the timing do matter and all these things and about that, because like a proper knowledge was not tested from mock exam number 1, because like we discussed only 20 to 25% of the syllabus. So we shall focus on some more good questions, some quality questions with the time being. So today, like I'm going to start about the next part, right? We have several questions remaining in financial systems 2, which also I'll be doing in the second part, right? As a gift for the people who are not here today, I'm starting off my next session. Right, so all this time, I was like discussing about, now when it comes to the economics, right? We are discussing about the business economics. All this time, we were like discussing about the micro context of it, right? So how an individual firm might affect. So micro context of it. And now we are going to focus about the macro context, right? How the demand supply did affect, how the tastes and preferences, how the pricing structures did happen, right? How everything went on with an individual company or in a minute or a macro level we discuss. So from this point onwards, we are like going to discuss about the macroeconomic part, not micro, macroeconomic. Starting off with domestic economy, macroeconomics and the domestic economy can be studied by focusing on the following. Macroeconomics can be focused and studied under several factors, which is like policy goals, models and frameworks, policy options, and how these policy goals are being achieved. Mostly the macroeconomic context we are going to study in terms of a country. How now all the demand curves in separate industries might get together and form the aggregate demand. We'll be talking about it. Ultimately, the aggregate demand. All the supply curves would get together and form the aggregate supply curve. How the equilibrium will work up, how the concepts like the national income, national expenditure, how the taxation would help, how the circular flow of funds would happen, right? So these things we are going to discuss. So basically, under policy goals, growing the economy, reducing inflation, and what actual inflation is, creating jobs, which is employment, which is so important in a economy, and then managing trade with other countries, and then models and frameworks, how to measure the size of the economy, right? How to measure the size. Now, we can say like the Sri Lankan economy is this much. So what are the parameters we can use to say that, right? So likewise, and then the circular flow of funds model, how to apply the supply and all this. And previously also I have mentioned that when it comes to policies for a country, there are two basic policies in a country. One is the monetary policy. Yeah. One is the monetary policy and the other one is the fiscal policy. How the taxation and all this stuff do work. And then achieving these policies. So how these economic policies, how these macroeconomic policies is achieved in the longer term for the betterment or the development of the economy of the country. How that happens. So macroeconomics and government policy goals Previously, we looked at the interaction of supply and demand in individual markets. Macroeconomics focuses on the working of the economy as a whole. That is important. Workings of the economy as a whole, right? Previously, we looked at demand and supply, right? We understood the price mechanism. We understood about the equilibrium, but that is basically on the individual company level or the industry level. So here what we are going to do is we are going to understand about this as an economy as a whole. So overall aggregate demand, output of goods and services, supply, factors of production. So what are the 4 factors of production, guys? 4 factors of production. Yes. Factors of production. Land, labor, capital. Yes. Enterprise, right? Land, labor, capital, and enterprise are the factors of production. So then total income earned by the providers and whatever government policy, all these things will be covering up in detail under this domestic economy and the macroeconomy part. Okay. So government macroeconomic policy. Typically, governments will have 4 macroeconomic policy objectives. Now look at what are these. When it comes to the policy goals, growth. What do you mean by growth? Economic growth of a country. Is it important? Economic growth? Important. Huh? So what do you mean by growth then? Economic growth? Simply just tell what do you mean by economic growth. Increasing the amount of outputs. Can that be? Kind of, right? So when it comes to a country, if the country remains, not our country, right? Not this one, right? For the past 76 years, we were having like one of the greatest economic growths in the country. No? So as a result, I'm not going to talk about that economic growth. I mean the other countries in the world, right? So when it comes to a country, from time to time, the living standards, cost of living, right? Facilities offered to the general public, right? Government allowed services. So all these things put together should have a better sort of a growth, right? That's the ultimate object. So if the living standard of the people when compared to 2010 and 2025 is almost the same, is there economic growth? Right? So we could have kottu for like 180 rupees back in 2019. Now the price? What's the price? No, you're not eating kottu. Then price? Nearly 1,000. Right? Economic growth, it has improved. Ready? Got it? So growth means in several factors, the economic growth. So government might be focusing on, most governments want economic growth. Growth should result in the following. See, more goods being demanded and produced. One such factor we can talk about growth is more goods and services being produced. Imagine the banking industry. What the banking industry was 10 years back, it's not right now. Not the similar as of now. Previously, the bankers said to be, I don't know. I'm from your age, your own generation. I'm from your own generation, right? So back in the day, people do say that what they did was they record transaction in large size of books. So you go to the bank, record, rise. 5 rupees deposited today. But now, advancement has happened. And the type of goods. Now, when it comes to whatever the mobile phones, 1,000 varieties, right? Types of food, 1,000 varieties. So amount of goods and services demanded and also being produced depicts economic growth. Then people earn more and can afford more goods. Earning level, income level. Income level, if that increases from period to period, it's said to be economic growth. If income levels increase of the general public, they can ultimately go and purchase more goods and services, which in turn will have a effect on what? production. You are demanding more and more because why? You are having good income levels. As a result, you go and purchase more and more, which will in turn enhance the industries. Thirdly, more people should have jobs. The level of employment or the level of unemployed. Right? So if a country, now we have in our country, Rakiya Virahita Upadhidari Indiya Sangha, we have ultimately learning for 13 years in the school, scoring high marks, students do enter university. That also even a small percentage. The other people, very marginally reduced marks, they can't go to the university. Ultimately, going into the universities and coming back, there are no jobs. So is there a problem or not when it comes to economy of a country? So the economy must have the labor force, right? Economy should have the qualified labor force. So if the labor force is there and they can't do anything, what they have to do is going into home and home or calculating the number of monkeys in the country. These are the jobs, right? Yeah. Right? Calculating the number of monkeys in the country. That's one job. So it's not economic growth. So the level of employment should grow. On the face of it, therefore, growth should result in an improved standard of living in a country and higher profitability for businesses. When it comes to the households, that should be the enhanced or the increased living standards. And when it comes to the businesses, environment should be created for them to earn more and more profits. Understood? So key issues in terms of economic growth. So read what are the key issues in terms of economic growth. Now this type of economic growth needs to be managed and created in an economy, in a country. So what are the issues? Is the economic growth fast enough to keep with population growth? Think of the economic growth for a country like ours, Sri Lanka, and economic growth for a country like India and China. Population level, China. Think of the employments created. Number of employments required for the Chinese people. So that's why they end up like coming into our countries and looting our employments and doing entire set of things for lower wages. Right? So they come. You just have a walk around Kolpeti, this Bambalapiti, that area, and see how many Chinese people are there. And Indians, all over there. Right? So employment problem. When the population rises, that's a problem, right? So I don't say that it's bad, it's good. Even our people, even Sri Lankans go into several other countries, work, they go everywhere. Name a country where Sri Lankan is not there. Everywhere. They do have, right? Indians, everywhere. Chinese people, everywhere. It's that the European people is not coming into these countries for now, right? But with time, there are a lot of documentaries and stuff that the global power is like shifting towards Asia. By 2030 and afterwards, the global power will not be USA and Europe, right? I don't know, in our lifetime, we will sometimes experience, right? For now, world power is between US and Europe. But ultimately, don't you see that the power is like shifting and shifting and shifting into Asia? Now, out of the 5 major economies, what are the major economies in the world? Obviously, China, right? So, India, Russia, all Asians, and also small us, Sri Lanka. We also Asian. So, power is coming into the Asian side, right? So, these things do change. I don't know, because I've told you like out of the largest 10 banks, first 4 is Chinese. They have the largest amount of US dollar reserves. Right? So, okay. Right? So these things do happen. So is the economic growth fast enough to keep up with the population growth? growth rates have to exceed inflation rates for benefits to rise. I have explained about this. So fixed deposits, imagine for the fixed deposit, you are going into the bank and investing in a fixed deposit, you have been given a rate of 8%. Whereas the country maintains an inflation rate of 10%. Is that worth? Is that worth? So for the same basket of materials which you purchase today, you will have to pay 10% additionally next month, right? But you go and invest in a fixed deposit, next month what you earn is 8% more. No point, right? So maintaining the inflation levels. Growth may be in demerit goods such as illegal drugs, right? Economic growth can happen like that too, right? Economic growth can happen where drug dealing is coming up to its peak. All these items, ice and everything coming into its peak. Economic growth. People have money to purchase drugs, right? And there are lot of drug loads. Economic growth, right? So economic growth can happen in demerit goods as well. Next, growth may be at the expense of the environment or through exploitation of the poor, mostly in developing countries, right? So cheap labor, right? Cheap labor and everything exploitation of labor might happen. And then rapid growth means rising incomes, and this often sucks in imports, worsening the balance of trade rather than benefiting domestic product. We'll be learning about balance of payments today, so I'll explain at that point. Inflation. What do you know of inflation, guys? What is inflation? I just told. Simply, is inflation good or bad? Bad. Those who say inflation is bad. No, that's okay. That's okay. We are not economists, no. Then say, you say bad. Those who say inflation is good. Why? Any reason? Why do you say inflation is good? Any interpretation you can give? Why? Have a reason? Inflation, why do you say having inflation in a country is good? Yes, true. Inflation, although now simply inflation means rising price levels, right? The same amount of basket of materials which you purchase today not being able to be purchased in the next hour or the next month is known as inflation. So it's bad. So I could have purchased this in this month and next month I can't. So it's theoretically bad. But for a country, when it comes to a country level, there should be inflation, right? There should be inflation because why? Every country has an inflation target. For our country, it's around 5% for this year. So the central bank and the government needs to maintain the inflation at a particular rate. Because if inflation is not there, what do you think? Will the producers will be motivated to produce? Imagine a loaf of bread, right? Or we'll take kottu, staple food. So it was 180 10 years back and still it's 180. But the raw materials has gone up. Will you think that the producers will come up with kottu shops and everything? They will not. Inflation should be there as a driver of economic growth, right? So if the rising price levels are there only, the suppliers or the producers will be tempted to produce more and more. So as a result, inflation should be there. Every country has an inflation target, right? There's a concept, flexible inflation targeting we'll be focusing on quite later, but inflation should be there. So inflation is when the prices of goods and services generally increase over time, which means your money buys less than it used to be. Most governments want stable prices and low inflation. The main reasons include this. although they need inflation, a government might need inflation, true, but that should be kept at a lower level. If inflation has gone up to like what happened in Venezuela and what's the other country where the inflation ran up so high? That there you had to use wheelbarrows and stuff, taking money to buy yellow. Zimbabwe, yes. Right? So inflation should be there, but should be kept at a minimum level, low inflation. The reasons include inflation causes uncertainty and stifles business investment. So just like that, imagine if the inflation level is 10% and the fixed deposit rate is 8%, definitely the people will not be making any kind of investments, right? So they will be thinking, why the hell should we make investments where we are not getting any sort of a return to match it with the inflation, right? We understood the real rate of interest and the nominal rate of interest, that how inflation matches this, right? So not all incomes rise in line with inflation. The poor and those on fixed incomes suffer the most, right? So when the inflation levels of a country rise, if the income levels also increase by that percentage, that doesn't matter. That's okay. Because income levels increase in line with the inflation level. So the people can buy whatever the basket of goods they purchased previously, right now also. But that doesn't happen though. For the poor, for one sector of the economy, the rise in income is not proportional with the rise of inflation rates. So that creates a problem. Then, in extreme cases of inflation, the function of money may break down, resulting in civil unrest. Inflation distorts the working of the price mechanism and thus a market imperfection. So sometimes in situations where you can't like really afford to bear this inflation, people might come out and create some kinds of civil unrest. Problems like that might happen. High inflation can affect savings in different ways. Inflation erodes the future purchasing power of money. So purchasing power of money is the same own thing, right? We could have purchased this set of items. That's my purchasing power. I had the power of purchasing this today, considering this inflation rate, but that might change when it comes to the next month. My purchasing power might go down if the inflation level has gone up. So the prices has gone up. As a result, my ability, my power of buying this same own stuff has gone down, right? Secondly, an alternative argument is that individuals' real wealth can spend less. This could result in higher savings. So, what I need to highlight is high inflation can affect the savings in both the manners. We can't say that it affects positively, we can't say that it affects negatively. So, high inflation, in the first instance, inflation erodes the future purchasing power, so people may decide to save less but spend more. People will have to spend more now. Imagine 10,000 rupees utilized on purchasing stuff. If the inflation has gone up, in the next month, they will think that there is no point in saving and saving money. Money will not have a value in the future. So why don't we end up purchasing all this stuff and enjoy? Savings going down. On the second hand, alternative argument is that higher prices reduce individuals' real wealth and so they spend less. Sometimes there is some part of the economy, some people, so there are always two types. So some people might say, some people might feel, why don't we spend and spend? There's no point in saving money. Whereas the other part of the economy might think, so why don't we go and spend like this? So inflation is rising, we should save some, right? So both the aspects, they might be experienced. So inflation, higher inflation might affect savings in both the ways, positive and negative both. Clear? Next is unemployment. Even in a healthy economy, some unemployment will arise as people do change jobs, right? So is there any country where the unemployment is zero? How can I say? Unemployment, yes. Is there any country where unemployment is zero? US? unemployment. UK, not a single country. The reason is people do change jobs. Vacancies or job roles created, right? Even for major economies like Japan, people do go there to do jobs. People do migrate to do jobs in Japan. People do migrate to UK, to US to do jobs. So there's a job market, which is right. So there's kind of unnamed. There are people who is not working. So we Asians and we people living in these countries, we are so energetic, right? We like put more effort in working. Do you think all these foreigners living in US and everywhere, do they work all the time? They're lazy people, right? They're not working. Unemployment rate, right? They just need anything to eat, just chill and wait. They don't want to earn. But the people from these countries, Asians, if possible, they will work for 28 hours per day. They work, right? So energetic. So we should be proud about it. So unemployment is a problem for every country. However, mass unemployment is a problem due to the following. The government has to pay out benefits. So a lot of major economies, a lot of developed countries, if you haven't got a job, they do pay, right? How do they pay? From the taxes collected. Now, as a country, we are also like coming up to that point, whereas we earn and we pay taxes. So most of the part of the economy will be paid with us as well. Isn't it? So just like a developed country, we are doing that. Becoming a developed country, right? So we earn and earn. We end up paying taxes and taxes. And we end up like fostering several lazy buggers. From my salary, I can like foster 3-4 lazy buggers. Don't work, you wait, I'll like from my taxation income, I'll give. Right? So a lot of major economies do the same. Like countries like Northern European countries, they pay hugely. Right? So Switzerland, all these Denmark, Finland, countries like that, they pay a large sum of money. If you don't have a house, if you don't work, you're being paid by the government. So it's a burden for the government. Okay. So go to that countries. Problem solved. Right? Unemployment has been linked to a rise in crime, poor health, and a breakdown in family relationships. What's that? Family relationships in macroeconomics? What? How does that happen? So you might have heard, so when financial constraints and the financial problems do come into the house from the rear door, right? Love and all these relationships leave the house from the front door. Haven't you heard? Haven't you heard? There's something like that. So when financial constraints and all these things comes into the house from the rear door, right? Love and all this stuff, emotions, everything goes away from the front. That's what they mean. Unemployment, crime. So when most of the people in the country don't have jobs, crime, right? Lot of thieves will be created, right? That's a problem. Unemployment is a waste of human resources and can restrict human growth. Definitely. Right? So imagine a lot of people who could have worked for the country and earned something, right? For the economy, not doing anything and idling. It's a problem. Right? So during the period like from 2010 to 2020, I had the stats. So most of the students coming out of the O-level results do not go to work in rural areas, right? Do not go to higher education. They don't do it. They anyhow accumulate some amount of money, purchase a three-wheeler and go on that business. That's a huge problem. Unemployment. It's not an employment. Just running a tuk-tuk. It's not employment. So those are the macroeconomic. Now you should think of that level. Now you are in macroeconomics, not macro. So the problems to the government, right? High unemployment could give firms higher bargaining power, allowing them to pay lower wages to prospective employees. That's another problem. If the unemployment rates are really high, what will happen? Again, demand and supply, right? supply of labor to the market is high or low? So high. Then what will happen to the demand? In order to come into an equilibrium, what will happen? Will there be a demand created? There will not be a demand, right? So organizations have the option, lot of people available with no jobs, right? So they can recruit. I'll give you 5 rupees. You will have to wait for the entire day. Okay, maximum I'll give you 10 rupees per day. Very low wages, right? So when very low wages are given, purchasing power drops. People's power or the ability of purchasing goods and services drops. Will that affect the economy as a whole? Understood? Balance of payments. What is balance of payment? Does every country require imports and exports? Is there any country who doesn't want? North Korea. No imports, export, North Korea. I don't know about that, but I think they need, right? Because there are limited resources available, right? So resources will be in another country, requirement is here. So oil is there in Saudi Arabia, but all the vehicles who is running from oil is in Asia and all these countries. All the other countries is running in electronic power, right? Electric vehicles mostly. We need oil. So problem. So import and export. We have tea, rubber, coconut and everything. Rest of the world doesn't have. So we just need to send it. So import and export. It's true that being a country like we import like rice, having the ocean all around and being an island, we import dried fish, right? Rice. Only thing we don't import is human. Apart from that, everything we import. So import and export is a matter of fact. So when it comes to a country, when you consider a country, balance of payments means you need to balance the trade deficit in between imports and exports. If imports is high and the exports is less, what's the problem? You should answer if you're Sri Lankan. You can't, you just can wait. If imports is high rather than exports, what's the problem? Why you need imported items when you go into a shop? Yes, that's the problem we had. Right? Our current account went to $50 million. $50 million. 2022, 2021, 2022, $50 million. Even we can't afford to purchase a single ship of oil. 50 million. Right? So the problem is what? If your balance is not there, if imports is high, right? To import everything, the cash flow should happen outwards. You should pay to other countries. You should pay dollars and purchase and buy. If exports is high, think of a country like Saudi Arabia or like oil countries like Iran, Yemen, and like that. They are having a trade what? Surplus. Right? They don't want to import anything. They have everything there, and apart from that, they are exporting oil to the rest of the world and earning money. Right? So if exports are high, that's okay, but imports are high, that's a problem. That drains out money out of the country. So balance of payments in the longer term, government seeks to establish a broad balance in between value of imports and exports from their country. there was one time where we were really close to having this balance. Why? We didn't have that much of money. We entirely closed down imports. So we had the balance. Right? At one point in time, we had. No, quite recently. So we closed down the entire vehicle importation, every kind of importation apart from essential stuff. So it was like almost close to the balance. Right? So every export was coming in, money was coming into the country, and they were thoroughly ordered to convert, right? But still, this came. So the problem we had that point was we stopped all imports. So money is not going out of the country. But if we are to have the balance, money should come into the country from the exports. So the problem we had was our exporters didn't bring back money. They just went on and parked it in Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, and everywhere. They didn't bring back. So they didn't want to bring back. Why? There was no any government. There was no any government. There was no any political stability. Right? So they didn't want to bring back money. They were expecting the dollar was by that time 180, right? And it was coming into somewhere around 240, 280. So every exporter didn't want to bring back money into the country. They just parked it abroad, kept money. $40 billion kept abroad. Why? They was waiting for the dollar to strengthen up more. So if they convert, imagine they have $1 billion outside the country. If they bring back, they are converting it to 280. So they were expecting the dollar to go to 500. So if the dollar went to 500 and then they bring back money, what would have happened? Profits. Did you get what I said? Right? So as a result, most of the exporters didn't bring back. So the central bank came up with a law, whatever the exporter who is exporting, that income should come to the country. From that income, a stipulated percentage, I can't remember, I think like 50 or something, definitely that should be converted. Right? That's how we just came up with this crisis. Okay. So remember all this stuff. So like when your kids ask about this in 2020, not 2020, 2045, 2050, you should say, right? Our time this was the case, and this was this King Gotabaya, and he messed up with everything and did all this, and the dollar went up to 300 and we had to do nothing. We didn't have oil and everything. We waited in fuel, this queues and everything. Stay here. We are like looking back the stuff what happened in 1970s and 60s. So likewise, get ready. So a long-term trade deficit. So a trade deficit is where the imports is high. So the money is going out of the country, right? A trade deficit with a net position of money leaving the country has to be financed. That is what you call a trade deficit. The trade surplus, don't know whether I have given it. All right. Trade surplus is where exports is high, right? Moving again, trade cycles. Have you heard of this instance? Trade cycles in an economy. So do you think that in US, right, since the inception of the US government up until now, that economy was like at the top? Do you think? None of the economies was like that, right? Even the Great Britain and then US, whatever the economy, Russian economy, every economy goes through something like this, which is it has ups and downs, just like our life, right? Just like our life, it has ups and downs. In my life, I have ups and downs. I don't know yours. Just like a trade cycle, right? So you have a recession. Here a recession. Here a trough. Then the expansion. Again, you might experience a peak. Again, you might have a recession or a trough. And likewise, economy is like that. Coming down, coming up, coming down. Like the entire world experienced the worst ever economic downturn in 2008. Global economic crisis. Who was responsible? Who is responsible for the 2008 GFC? Not me. Don't look at me. Who? Donald Trump. George Bush. Yes, Barack Obama. Guess. Who was responsible for the global financial crisis 2008? By 2008, where were you? 2008, where were you? Scholarship. Then? Not born? Even I was at grade 5. By then. Right? Okay, but remember, global financial, there are something like that, right? In economics, one was Great Depression, that was in, I think, 1930s, right? And then Black Friday or something like that, one economic downturn, that was in 1970s, 80s. I can't remember the actual year, right? But there was something called Black Friday collapse. Black Monday. Okay. Black Friday is that offer. Totally forgot that. Okay, Black Monday. Black Friday is something else, right? All right. So then you had quite recently 2008 global financial crisis, which was as a result of housing market in US. Although they claim to be like the global power, they are so foolish, right? All the time they're so foolish. So what did people in what did US banks did actually? They gave like subprime mortgages, something called subprime mortgages, which is like, now when you go into a bank, you know that I have told you very clearly that you need grandma's birth certificate as well if you are taking a housing loan. Take that. When you go, take that. Huh? So just like that, it's so stringent. The procedures are so stringent in our country. But what happened in US, they gave housing loans to everybody. Everybody got a housing. As a result, what happened to the market of the houses? That went up. Everybody is having money and is asking for a house. Housing bubble came up, right? Something called housing bubble came up, and then it burst, right? So every individual decided, now imagine my value of my mortgage is this much. Now this has gone up to this much, right? There's no point of paying. Everybody started defaulting on their loans, right? Subprime mortgage. So as a result, few major banks fell. One is Lehman Brothers, as I could remember, that bank. So because of that, the global financial crisis came up. And then it had a contagion effect and it went to other countries as well and was a major disaster. Do you know that we lived in that period, right? As a country, Sri Lanka was there in 2008. But our economy was not that hard. Our economy was not that hit, right? 2008, we were even having a lot of difficulties. We were having a war, right? It came to an end in 2009. So the last moment, 2008. But still, our economy was not that hit using this. All the other major economies fell. Just like that, we have trough, peaks, and like this. What I need to say is, an economy might have all these cycles, trade cycles. But ultimately, one government should try is to have the trend like this. Right? Although this ups and downs is there, when you take the longer term, how should be the trend? The trend should be an upward. Do you understand? Right? So having a draw, having a like recession, that's okay. An economy might have, right? That's why we do change the monetary policy, this and that. That's why we do it. The central bank and the stuff. Then some economists argue that one role of government is to smooth out this pattern to avoid boom and bust years. So what government should try, right? What government should try is to reduce the period in which that particular country remains in recession, right? So if the country is having an economic recession, if that is for 10, 20 years, no point. So the government should have strategies and the government should try to minimize the number of years in which they stay in recession. Clear? Next part. The economic diamond. What are the other types of diamonds you have heard? Any diamond you have heard before? Haven't heard? Diamond? Any other diamond? That was there in your, you are in certificate level. Haven't you heard? One other diamond? Porter's diamond, you haven't heard? No? You don't know Michael Porter? Michael Porter, you don't know? Come on. For science, we have like Isaac Newton. So 3 rules and everything, all these gravitational force and everything. Hell of a lot of theories and all these things in physics. In economy, right, and in business studies, we have Michael Porter. Michael Porter's 5 forces of industry analysis, right? You have this threat of new entrants, buying power, bargaining power, and all this. You will learn all this in certificate level, trust me. Then you have Michael Porter's generic strategies, cost leadership, and then focus and differentiation. Then you have Michael Porter's value chain, right? Then you have Michael Porter's and some other stuff, and then you have Michael Porter's diamond, Porter's diamond of national advantage. So when you are moving from one country to another, if you are like expanding your operations from one country to another, there are factors to look at, right? If you are expanding from Sri Lanka to India, I mean your business, right? You have to look at several factors of comparative advantage, which is Porter's diamond, right? There are seven messages. Okay. No, we are doing it after the break. 2023, Sri Lanka had current advanced level surplus. A level surplus mean? In 2023, Sri Lanka had current. Is that account, Vidusha? I can't understand. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. UK unemployment rate is currently 4.6. Okay, good. Thank you, Tarini. Sir, are you sharing the screen? I already do. We don't know what are the... current account. Yes. That was what I was telling, because we stopped all the imports. So you were having kind of a surplus in current account back in 2023. So I was talking about diamonds, right? So Porter's diamond, Google search and see, you will have to definitely by heart when you are doing certificate level. But this is, I'm going to talk about economic diamond, right? The economic diamond is like this. Now I put a picture. This economic diamond. So this is the diamond shape, right? This is the diamond shape. So we shall discuss, what do you mean by economic diamond? A useful illustration of the economy's performance and the success of economic policies is the economic diamond, showing main economic objectives of governments, right? Main economic objectives of the government is depicted in an economic diamond. It also depicts economic performance and success of the economic policy. Now, every government has economic policy. Yeah? So if you like go into the central bank website and search, you will have an economic policy described like several pages. So economic policy it's outlined for the next 5 years, the economic policy of the country. So they say this is the budget allocated for the industry sector. This is the budget allocated for the service sector. This is what we expect. These are the developments we expect. Likewise. So although a priority among the above objectives varies with the government's value and the political motives, these are the 4 major objectives of a typical government. Right? So economic diamond is where these 4 objectives are graphically shown. So what are the 4 objectives which you have to remember? Price stability. First one is price stability. So which is you definitely have to maintain a constant level of inflation, but that should be a lower value. If the inflation is 80%, 75%, better leave that country, don't live. Right? So price stability is one factor, one basic objective. Secondly, full employment. Not achieved every country. There's no country where full employment is achieved, but still lot of countries. So as she said correctly, England is having, UK is having 4.6 unemployment, so which is good. Only 4.6 of the population is unemployed. Right? So next, external balance implying no longer term tendency for balance of payments or current account deficits. Minimized current account deficit, which is imports and the exports balanced in the proper manner. Right? Fourth factor, economic growth as measured by the annual rise in GDP. We will talk about GDP. Actually, what do you mean by GDP? Yes.